Welcome back to our Humanity Academy podcast, Thoughts on Humanity. This is episode 3. My name is Lisa Loewen, and I am a registered clinical counselor here in the province of beautiful British Columbia in Canada. And I am joined by my partner and husband, David. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'll add in, we are recording this today in the lovely Clately-Tenay territory in central British Columbia.
So one of the reasons I asked Dave to join me in this podcast was I just wanted to explore the concept of relationship with self. And one of the most common themes I see in my practice and hear frequently is, how do I become friends with myself? How do I work on that relationship? Isn't even possible. It's not something we necessarily learn in school. And so I'm creating a course on that. It's called Go Friend Yourself. And what it is about an exploration of how you can connect at a deeper level to yourself, and just to give yourself an opportunity to explore what's going on with relationship to yourself and what does self mean. And so, Dave, I kind of want to pick your brain. One of the interesting things in getting to know you over the last 15 years is that you have an interesting relationship with yourself. And I'm curious, for you, when did you notice that you had a relationship with yourself? And when did you decide or notice that you liked that guy?
Well, I don't sure if I always like that guy. I'm sure as many folks have that tension-filled relationship with self, just as we have tension-filled relationships with others and tensions between various aspects. I would say, if I think back, and it'd be a lot of years, go back to early childhood, probably even before I was 10, recognizing that I had a relationship with self. And of course, some of that might be foggy memory now. It's many decades ago. But I spent a lot of time on my own. I grew up in a rural area. We grew up in a spot where a river kind of almost fully circled around our households, and both my brother and the rest of our family and I spent quite a bit of time fishing out on the river. And so from a young age, I was either out with somebody, but certainly fishing in my own area, or as I got older, I spent a lot of time just out on the river, wandering the banks, either with myself or with friends. And of course, we'd get into separate areas. So that relationship started pretty darn young.
So I'm curious about that. How often do you utilize positive memories to maybe bolster or influence your relationship with yourself now? Like, kind of using that as maybe a reminder to go like, hey, buddy, times are tough right now, but remember, we've experienced these good times. Or maybe you don't have a process like that for yourself. But I'm curious if you're comfortable in kind of sharing that.
Yeah, I would say I don't really have that kind of relationship. I don't necessarily tend to get too wrapped up in labeling this memory as positive or this memory as bad. They're just memories. And yeah,
Mhm.
certainly some will have connotations over others. And an example I would think of in this case would be looking after myself, looking after my physical body. And so over the years, I've taken on exercise, played lots of different sports. In recent years, taken on more endurance type of sports. As you well know and share with others, I like to ride bikes uphill more than I do downhill generally, and that sort of stuff hurts at certain times, especially if you're training for an event. You're pushing your body, or even lifting weights. If somebody is lifting weights as part of a program, you lift to failure, and that's not comfortable. You get lactic acid buildup, those types of things. And when I was younger, I used to be more of a sprinter type of athlete, more sort of short distances, and it's a different type of pain, but still painful. And so going to that question around just whether it's positive or negative, I don't necessarily think through that one. Think through the memories in those ways. However, I'll certainly process and think about memories in various ways to be able to think about how that can support what I'm doing now or not supporting, or gee, I remember that lesson. That was a hard lesson at that time, but it's not necessarily negative. And so there's that balance. It's kind of a push and a pull with those experiences and relationship with self. And I wouldn't say it's always been like that. That has certainly come in the last few decades of my adult life and different experiences. But still, I would say that at the core of those and at the root of those is still a lot of time on my own, whether that's making concerted efforts to grab 15 minutes in the morning to have a coffee before everyone else is up, or going out for an 8 hour bike ride, or just going out and wandering and hiking, those types of things. And of course, that's been more challenging as we've got 3 kids and a complicated family. But as well, then you can start to look at those experiences and say, oh, I'm going to grab 10 minutes, and that will do, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we have today.
Mm-hmm. So you bring up the concept of pain, and there are a few belief structures or just ways of being as a human in this world that highlight a big part of being on this planet is suffering. And one of the ways that I highlight relationship with self, I don't always call it friends with self. I'll often say being on your own team.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's also spent a ton of time on my own, all day I'd be out solo on my horse. Must have driven my parents nuts not knowing where I was. I could have been dead for, 8 hours, but that didn't cross my mind because I was having fun and I was building an experience of just being in the moment. And if something did happen, I learned how to rely on myself. And those were, for me, insulating or bolstering factors to learn how to be on my own team. And so some of that learning to be on my own team, you and I do a lot of writing, and writing is something that is such a solo journey. We can write together, but ultimately it's your hand that's on the pen, on the paper,
Mm-hmm.
scrolling across the page. And so that can be such a beautiful way in getting into the depths of connecting to oneself. So that's one of the things I wanted to explore in this course. And there's some reasons why we would probably want to work on the relationship with self. One, and this is something that I think was introduced to me from you when we first met, was, basically the relationship with yourself is the only relationship you're going to have for the rest of your life. People
Mm-hmm.
come and go, right? And that's okay. That's the nature of being alive. But why not strengthen that relationship with self? And what I hear from you is that those physical pursuits and that alone time is really important for that connectivity for you. And it's a limited time offer. Like no one's guaranteed to be here for 93 years, like, one of my grandfathers was. So why not take this opportunity to explore as well as we can? Who are we? What do we like? um, and pushing ourselves, maybe not always to the limits, like you yourself had said, like going out for an 8 hour bike ride. That's definitely an extreme experience. But um, we were talking about today on our walk the concept of dating yourself, which you thought was kind of funny. But I'll often ask clients, I'm like, so create a dating profile of yourself. It doesn't mean you post it, but it's a vehicle of exploration to go, the person that you are presenting, is that someone that you would be friends with, right? Is that someone that you would want to date? And we have a running joke in our relationship because we did meet online, so we did have to create dating profiles. Um, Going back to that, I think I probably would date myself. I do like that person, but it's taken a lot of time to like her more, potentially even love her. So that journey of self-love, I'm just wondering if you feel comfortable speaking to that just for a moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's probably the interesting part for folks that'll find as in going through this is that you and I don't necessarily, we don't see eye to eye. We're different people on different things, which doesn't, it's not a bad thing. It actually makes for some pretty great conversation and dialogue and thinking through about the choices and decisions that we make individually, but also within a marriage. And I was mentioning to you on the walk, I was like, I don't really like that term of dating myself. I find that kind of odd and awkward. And I'm sure, the counselor in you is like, oh boy, we should unpack that. there's that aspect where when I think about it, and in thinking about some of the pieces you were naming around this course and your thinking on it, it really comes down to self-acceptance is about that piece. Because I sort of chuckle and say, no, I wouldn't want to date me. That would be really challenging. And hence why I have so much respect and admiration for you. You married me. And so that's sort of that ongoing joke. We even have family members that go, wow, somebody married Dave. Look at that. And they have quite a fascinating relationship. So, in a sense, from a dating or being friends, it's not really the viewpoint that I've looked at, and I probably
Mhm.
have to think about it and unpack it myself some more. It's more about that acceptance and that compassion in that relationship, that it is a relationship with myself, and there's no escaping it unless to that point in time when you take your last breath. So I don't necessarily look at it as a dating or a friending or otherwise. I've always sort of tended to march to my own path and drum in life, and friends have reflected that as well. And there's that aspect that if I was to really, as I'm thinking out loud and reflecting on this, is one of the great things that I appreciate about friends that I do have is that they've been long-standing, long-time friends, but we don't have to talk all the time. And I would say there's
Mhm.
aspects of my personality where that comes up. It's like, whoa, I haven't seen that part of my personality in 10, 15 years. And then get to know that aspect and go, oh, yeah, right. And there was that,
Mhm.
even using that example of cycling. Many years ago, before we got married, before I met you, I spent 3 years riding a bike across Western North America and really getting to know myself in all sorts of different situations. And now returning to those long days of cycling 100 kilometers and going, oh, right, I remember some of those. My body remembers, and my mind goes to places about appreciating the thought processes that happen. Sometimes it loops when you're out on a long ride. I don't
Mhm.
have music on. I'm just sitting in my own thoughts in my own mind. So there's that aspect that I would say there's probably more about compassion and acceptance. And you or anyone else could say, oh, yeah, but that's important in friendships. And I'd say, yeah, that's fair.
Mhm.
I've just never really thought about it as friending oneself. At the same time, I really like the concept based on my interactions and relationships with people over the years, where I will meet people that strike me as not being comfortable with themselves, good, bad, ugly,
Mhm.
or otherwise.
Mhm.
And that accepting aspect, and what ends out in my observations as a non-clinician, just an observer of people, is that things start to get suppressed in that relationship, and then people are surprised on other aspects. And these can come out in relationships. They have come out in relationships, both of my own experiences and of others. So it's that's sort of my thinking and approach on it. And it's this sort of balancing act of saying, yeah, it's kind of an odd way of looking at it. I don't look at it that way, but boy, I could sure see how that would be a really powerful concept for a lot of folks. And like you've been sharing, and many conversations we've had over the last while, and is a big basis of Humanity Academy, is here's some things that I see as commonalities over 10 years of working as a counselor and working with people and some of their deeper, most inner components.
Mhm. Yeah, so another piece of the course that I am pondering through, hoping to release it in the near future this spring, is how are we in relationship to in ourselves or with ourselves in different settings as well. And you had talked about the concept of people suppressing things, and as a clinician, um recognizing that it's common for humans to do something called masking, right? So who do
Hmm.
I need to be in this scenario? And that's a normal and okay thing to do. The trouble might be we might mask so much that we actually lose who we are, and as we lose who we are, we lose that relationship to self.
Hmm.
And so just giving an invitation to unpack, are you friends with yourself at work? Or what is your relationship to yourself at work? What is your relationship to yourself in your marriage or your relationship um, with your parents or with friends or with your kids, right? So as our kids are getting older, I notice in my own self that I'm allowing more of who I am beyond just a mom to come
Hmm.
out into the relationship, and they've even remarked on that, which is kind of curious. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it, but it's just this, it seems very natural to sort of step into that broader part of my being, because I'm no longer changing diapers anymore, or having to do 3 meals a day or whatever, all of the things they are now more self-contained units. So just kind of also learning how to gauge who am I here? And we do that in relationship when we meet. I mean, granted, you and I only knew each other for 4 months and then got married. Um, and you guys can read about that. We can throw a link here in the comments in the description below. But just giving that invitation to just open up to who am I? We don't have a lot of opportunities in the world for that because we're constantly being bombarded by this is who you should be, this is what you should eat, this is how you should look, these are the things that you should be doing. So all that other bullshit that we constantly encounter. So this course is really just an invitation to explore that relationship with self. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
thanks
Well,
for joining me.
oh, absolutely. And I was going to say in there, you were mentioning, I don't know if that's right or wrong, and that's one of our taglines. There's no one right way to live. And so that who am I question can be who was I? Who am I today? Who might I want to be tomorrow? And I was just going to appreciate that aspect that we're at a stage in our life as our kids we got two graduating this year and another a few years away, looking at another stage in life and thinking, well, who might I be in those stages? Who might we be?
Mm-hmm.
All of those
Mm-hmm.
aspects. Identity and who am I can be a very fluid relationship going well back into the past, even as we've explored in this very short dialogue, into the now and into the future. But ultimately, it always still comes back to right now, as tomorrow never comes, right? It's always right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. You can check out our articles that we write quite frequently out on Medium. We also have some posts that we throw up on LinkedIn, and you can find us on Facebook. Where other places can people find us?
Oh, a variety. We'll put the links in the description in the video here. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on X/Twitter, on Medium, on LinkedIn, any of those platforms. You can come and find us, read what we've got, and you can also visit our website at www.humanityacademy.life. We have free education, and we have our first paid course up at our virtual campus. Links in the description. Come and join us, follow us, send us a message. We're always happy to connect.
Thanks for joining me.